The diencephalon is a part of forebrain. It is called as between brain. The region of the diencephalon is the third ventricle and structures which are bounding the third ventricle. Above there is cerebral hemispheres, below the midbrain and inferior surface that exposed and formed by the hypothalamic structures. The anterior to posterior, the structures are optic chiasma, infundibulum with tuber cinereum, optic tract and mammillary body. The superior surface is concealed by the fornix and is formed by the roof of the third ventricle. It is the boundary of diencephalon. So the lateral surface is again bounded by internal capsule. The medial surface, the lateral wall of the third ventricle, superior part by the thalamus and inferior part by the hypothalamus. So the medial wall, the medial surface is usually related to the lateral wall of the third ventricle. Here the superior part is the thalamus portion, the inferior part is hypothalamus. So the divisions of diencephalon is the thalamus, metathalamus, epithalamus, subthalamus and hypothalamus. The thalamus, metathalamus, epithalamus lies superior and dorsal aspect. The subthalamus, hypothalamus, inferior and ventral parts. So these are the structures of the diencephalon. Now we'll come to the one by one. The first, the important is the thalamus. So the thalamus is a large ovoid mass of grey matter on each side of the third ventricle. So it is a great sensory relay station and correlation center. So whatever the sensory information coming from the peripheral region, that first reaches to the thalamus, then it transmits to the center. So it is called as one of the great sensory relay station and as well as correlation center. So this thalamus is connected, that is interthalamic connection. Both thalamus, there is a right and left thalamus are connected, that is interthalamic connection. So usually the length is about 3 centimeters anterior posteriorly and it has the two ends, anterior and posterior end, and 4 surfaces, superior, inferior, medial and lateral. So just you can see in this figure, so the thalamus is this much of the portion. Actually this is the region of third ventricle because the lateral wall of the third ventricle is formed by the medial surface of thalamus. So above this one is the white color, that is corpus callosum. Below that, this is the lateral ventricle and this is the fornix region, and here that related to this portion is the thalamus part. So below here again you will get it the hypothalamic structure. So this is usually in the medial surface of the cerebral hemisphere. There you will get it and observe the thalamus part. So in the this is the medial surface. So this is the thalamus portion, to the colored structure, and here will be the hypothalamic portions, and these are the connecting structures. This is the midbrain, this is the pons, and this is the medulla. This is the corpus callosum, and this is the fornix structure. This is the medial surface of cerebral hemisphere. So this is the cross section at the thalamic region. So these are the two lateral ventricles, and this is the interventricular septum, and here this is the third ventricle. On either side these are the thalamus. So this is the picture of thalamus portions. So even you can take it in the medial section or in the cross section. So this is the sagittal section like that, the medial surface of the cerebral hemisphere. This is the cerebellum, this is the fourth ventricle, this is the passage for the third ventricle to fourth ventricle. This is called as cerebral aqueduct. This is the region of third ventricle. Above this one is lateral ventricle. See, this is the fornix, and this is the corpus callosum, and this is the portion of interthalamic section. See, this is the hind part, that is occipital lobe. This is the parieto-occipital sulcus, very clear picture. So this is the parietal lobe, and this is the frontal lobe. So this is the medial surface. You can very make clear of this one in this figure. The cerebellum, fourth ventricle, cerebral aqueduct, that is in the part of midbrain, and this is the third ventricle, diencephalon part, particularly the thalamus and hypothalamus. So these are the structure in the medial surface. So in cross section you can see this is the lateral ventricle, and here you will get the thalamus portion. So this is sagittal sinus, that is the anterior posterior fissure that is separates the two hemispheres partially. So this is also in a cross section what we are observations. So now what is the internal structure? The internal structure has the grey matter and again the white matter. So here the grey matter usually consisting the 7 main nuclear groups. The 7 main nuclear group is the grey matter. Number 1, anterior and medial teleothalamus nucleus, lateral and ventral neothalamus, intralaminar midline nuclei, reticular nucleus. These are the 7 main nucleus, that is grey matter. And what is the white matter? The white matter is stratum journale on the superior aspect, that is superior surface, and external medullary lamina, that is on the lateral surface, internal medullary lamina, that is the vertical sheet of white matter, divides the grey matter as a 3 parts: anterior, medial and lateral. So here, what is the blood supply to this thalamus? Mainly posterior communicating artery, posterior cerebral artery, posterior choroidal artery, lenticulo-thalamic artery, branch of the middle cerebral, and thalamostrate vein and choroid veins. So what is the function of this thalamus? It is a great relay station from where all types of impulses except olfactory, whatever the sensory peripheral information, that sensation is first reached to the thalamus, then it is transferred to the center. So it is called as relay station from the whatever peripheral region impulses, that is particularly the sensory impulses except olfactory impulses. And also it is a process of correlation, correction and integration. The proper sense of the knowledge, correction and integration is main process of the thalamus function. Then capable of appreciating touch poorly, the pain and temperature sense. Even the pain and temperature and touch is poor, but it is capable of identification of that sense of knowledge. Then it influences the motor activity from its sensory experience. That will make the influences on the motor activity from its sensory experiences. And also it maintaining a state wakefulness and alertness. So the wakefulness and alertness maintaining position. And also it controls of emotional behavior and recent memory mechanism. Control of emotional behavior and also a recent memory mechanism. Whatever the memory, the recent memory will be stay in this thalamus region. Then it will be transferred to the permanent center. Then associated with the autonomic control of viscera, it is associated with the autonomic control system of the viscera, that is organs. Then personality and intellect of an individual is also one of the important part of the function of the things. And it also having with the motor control, and mainly it receives the auditory, somatosensory and visual sensory signals and relays sensory signals to the cerebral cortex. So these are the functions of the thalamus. So we remember which of these thalamus portions. Then functions related with the particular nuclei. So the 7 nuclei which are particularly in related to the particular function. As I told, there is a 3 parts of the thalamus by separating of white matter. So the anterior part, anterior nucleus region, that associated with the limbic system, and the medial part, that is integration of visceral and somatic activities, personality of an individual, especially the mood and feeling status. Then lateral part, that integration of visual, auditory and somatic sense of knowledge. Then the ventral part, the major relay stations in the motor pathway. It is a major relay stations in the motor pathway, links to the cerebellum and basal ganglia to motor areas of the cerebral cortex. Then also it reduces the tremor in Parkinson's disease. Then interlaminar, there is a general awareness of sensory stimulation. Interlaminar part, the central awareness of sensory stimulation. Then midline, that involved in the visceral response. Then reticular, the regulation of thalamic activity. That is the point you have to be remember of this structure nucleus in individual functional capacity. What is the clinical anatomy? So the clinical anatomy, the impairment of all types of sensibilities. There is a impairment means not properly sensations identical point. The proprioceptive sense usually suffering the most, especially the joint sense, that is posture and passive movements. Then also the thalamic syndrome. That thalamic syndrome is caused by a vascular lesion of thalamo-geniculate, that is a branch of posterior cerebellar artery. Then enhanced response to tactile stimuli produces the existing pain. Then abnormal voluntary movements, that is by ataxia, choroarthrosis and intention tremor. Then also a disturbances of sensation, that means the hyperesthesia, the severe spontaneous pain on the opposite side of the body. Then emotional insensibility, that is spontaneous or forced laughing or crying. Then contralateral hemiplegia or hemiparesis, spontaneous pain and pleasant as well as unpleasant sensations or feelings are exaggerated. So this is the portions of the clinical point of aspect. So this clinical point is very important in identification of the system.